such a festive, there's such a festive atmosphere that I feel to start talking about lament is a shift in gears, but I think that this is an important start to the beginning of this wonderful evening together. And what a pertinent conversation. Thank you, Outliers. I would like to start by telling you a story of someone who came up to me. I had been part of a panel discussion, and a white person came up to me afterwards, and he told me this pretty awful story of how he'd been at an apartheid museum monument, and the person who was showing them around had been imprisoned, tortured, terribly abused as a political prisoner. And the tour group were going around and hearing his story, which is horrific by the sounds of it. And he said that I actually had to stop the tour. And I said, not all of us. It was not all white people. I didn't do that. And my heart broke when I heard him say it. And I stopped him and I said, can I interrupt you and ask why you couldn't lament with this man? While he was telling me the story about this horrific thing that happened to him. What is it in you? He said, I didn't want the other people on the tour to think that about me and about white people. And he couldn't answer what beyond that. We had a conversation. And, this man's story doesn't really matter in terms of location or this individual, because it's a story I've heard over and over. It wasn't new to me, but I interrupted it this time and said, why can't you lament that it happened? And that's my question. What is it that stops us from lamenting this indefensible horror that happened in our country? What is it that stops white people from being able to lament and acknowledge the horror? So lament, I sent Heidi and them a joke of saying the title of my talk was Le What? Lament is not something that people talk about a lot, but lament is a verb that says to bewail, bemoan, express grief or sorrow for something. It implies regret for the loss of... it implies regret for the loss or impairment of something of value. It implies a profound or demonstrative expression of sorrow. So if something horrific happened in our country, and it's not just what happened then, but it carries on today. Only a callous person could not lament what is happening today and not be able to look back and see how the past is impacting on our current. So the key is that what happened in our past continues to haunt our country today. The inequality in our country is obvious. Only a fool would deny that our current state is linked to our past. Our race-based poverty and massive inequality is a direct result of unjust laws that we still feel the impact of today. Callous and calculated system that benefited white people over everyone else. Let that not be said of our hearts today, that we are callous and calculated. Can we lament? When I arrived, when I arrived in South Africa as an immigrant in 1981, I was offered education on a platter, while my fellow South Africans were offered crumbs. And in 1982, the South Africa apartheid government spent an average of 1,211 rand on a white child per year, and 146 rand on a black child per year. And as I entered, not even as a South African, I slipped into that privilege and was afforded this really good education at the cost of other people who were actually born here. So today, white South Africa, the Human Development Index looks at things like food security, sanitation, education, and the whole of South Africa as a country rates 116 on that list. White South Africans are up there as 15. A white South African lives at a HDI of 15, which is equal to, which is more than France, still Belgium. But a black South African is still generally on 116, which is where the country is at. So, seen on a wall, poverty and inequality haunts us. Our past shouts at us today, and we cannot ignore it. And I'm sure everyone in this room would agree that. Seen on a fence in Constantia, on the Elfin Greenbelt, a reminder that whites need to face our history. And it starts with saying sorry and lamenting. But what stops us from saying sorry? I find it interesting that the word ignore and ignorance come from the same root. And if you ignore something for long enough, you become ignorant. And I think that one of the reasons people aren't able to say sorry and lament or be sorry is stems from a place of ignorance. Pride, even children often don't want to say sorry. Is our self-esteem so high that we can't admit that our ancestors were awful and did awful things? Or is our self-esteem so low that we can't admit that our ancestors did and set up awful systems? Sometimes it's our attachment to comfort, privilege, too much resource. We're so used to it, we think it's normal. There's an individualistic culture that says, I didn't do it, so I shouldn't have to, I'm not responsible because I didn't do it, which is a common individualistic cultural viewpoint instead of a communal, collective response. Sometimes we tend to be fix-it focused, and if we can't fix it, we don't want to admit it. And my friend and colleague Nkosi Golo always says to me, you don't have to know the solution to admit there's a problem. You don't have to know how to fix it. Admit there's a problem first. And I found that very good advice as I've journeyed with him and others the last few years. Worse than all of this, what if we don't say sorry because we're not truly sorry? If we know our history, we can only be sorry and we can only lament together. I heard a young German on the radio talking about the Holocaust a few years back, and he was about 20, and he spoke about his country, and he spoke with such knowledge, authority, wisdom, collective responsibility. He spoke about restitution and how they'd had war tax, and he, so many years later, like times by 5 of our process, could say it was us and we'll never let that happen again, and we had to make right. So I thought, what is missing in our white South African story that stops us from saying sorry? Because I'm sure that many people in this room believe that we need to, and we lament, but there are many, many people, and you can tell it from the discourse, whether it's online or around the braai. Why is sorry so important? Sorry connects us to our past and to each other. Sorry humbles us. If you think of something that's happened to you that's been awful, and the difference that it made when someone, first of all, said, sorry, it happened to you, and most definitely sorry if anything of my life was connected to that. So it's just common sense that sorry makes a huge difference. Sorry makes us not feel alone. Sorry makes us feel heard and understood. Sorry brings back our humanity, because we all lost our humanity in the many, many hundreds of years that we follow. So what does sorry do? I think we can all admit that sorry is important, and we could do a whole 15-minute talk just on that. But what does sorry do for the people saying sorry and lamenting? I think the biggest thing for me is that sorry shifts attitude. Sorry is humbling, and acknowledging our past humbles us, and we could do with a lot more humility in our South African discourse. And I've seen in my own life that sorry and lament moves my giving from charitable, which makes me feel good, to restitutive, which is more justice focused, and it feels right. It doesn't feel good, it feels right. And that's a difference. As we move as we acknowledge what we gained at other people's expense, it's much easier to give it, not from a charitable thing, but from, oh no, this is obvious, this is right, this is appropriate. And feeling right about something feels different to feeling good, in my experience. As I've said, humility is a big thing that's missing. And we saw it when people arrogantly waved the old flag at people in this last week. The arrogance and the lack of humility broke my heart. The lack of empathy, the lack of humanity. There's a reason the word humane comes from humanity. So we're restoring our humanity when we can acknowledge our past. And what of guilt? Many people will say, I don't want to walk around feeling guilty my whole life. And the way I see it is that guilt is an activator. It's not a mood. Guilt is something that catalyzes you because something's wrong. When you feel guilty, it's because something's wrong. You can't walk around feeling guilt all the time. Guilt activates you to do the right thing. And it's a catalyzer. It's an appropriate response to wrongdoing and injustice. It is what well-socialized and empathetic humans do. When they join the dots and realize something is wrong, you feel guilty. That's appropriate. When you feel that you were given something that was stolen from someone else, it's appropriate that you don't feel good about that and that guilt comes in. But guilt as a mood paralyzes, and guilt as an activator is a catalyst for you to change and for you to give back and to actively be part of this beautiful restoration work in front of us that is South Africa. Lament is ongoing, but guilt is not. And when I feel guilty, something's not sitting well for me. Either I'm not giving, or I'm developing an arrogant attitude, or when guilt activates me to change, then it's different to lament, which is, I think we'll be lamenting what happened in South Africa for the rest of our lives. We can't fix it, and we can only be part of moving forward together. So guilt is an indicator and an activator. It's not a mood, and lament is our ongoing, we do that together. What does sorry entail? Obviously, again, this could be a whole talk on its own, but Johan Kalanta says, sorry has 3 legs. It's the why, the because, and the and. For example, I'm sorry that I received an education at the cost of yours, because I know it was unjust and the ramifications are massive and it was harmful to you and your family. And I will do all I can to ensure that your children do not suffer what you did. Saying sorry. For me, sorry is a broader start, which starts with a compassionate, I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry it happened. Then it moves to, I'm sorry it happened to you. I'm sorry it happened to you and yours. And I'm sorry I benefited from what happened to you and yours. I will do all I can to make it right. So the response to this is our ability to respond. I'm terrible with PowerPoint. So our responsibility is, how are we able to respond to this knowledge? And our responsibility is our next step in this acknowledgement and our lament. And I would say that the 3 steps of acknowledging and responding are, first, to listen, because if you're not really sorry, you just have to listen to what people have been through and continue to go through, and you will be sorry if you're human. Lament is the following on, the lamenting that it happened. And then because I'm a good Baptist, I had to put labour, though I actually wanted to say act. So listen, lament, and then we act together to change the things that we can't fix it, but we can act together to make the future different. There are literally hundreds of ways that people have been stolen from in this country. But some of the key areas where most South Africans have been stolen from and destroyed were education. Obviously, these are big pillars, there's so many more. But education, medical health and well-being, home, where home is and accommodation, transport and cash flow, access to funds and that safety net. And so when people say, what can I do? There's just a start, and it's very easy to pick which pillar do you want to be involved in, if not all. And then often people say, can't we just move on? I've heard people say, can't we just move on? And I have found that often the people who say, can't we just move on, are actually people who are saying, can't we just stay the same? What I would love to challenge people when they say that is, can we move forward? Because moving on means we stay the same. Moving forward means we change. So we need to move forward, not move on. We need to say sorry. We need to be sorry. And we need to give back. And I'm going to end with a short story, which speaks for itself. A friend of mine's son, he was about 2 or 3, he removed a whole lot of caterpillars from a bush at the bottom of the garden, and he transported them all up to the top of this, to the farm, and he put them on the concrete, and they were clearly struggling, and he called me to show me these caterpillars. They were on a concrete slab, and he said, come look at my stash. So I said, Caleb, they're going to die. I hate seeing creatures suffering, so I said, no, Caleb, these caterpillars are going to die. You need to put them back on the bush where they were thriving before. And he said, sorry. He looked at the caterpillars, he said, sorry. And then he looked at me and started walking away. So I said, no, Caleb, come back. You can't just say sorry. I said, you have to take them back. He said, no, I've said sorry. Jesus will take them back. And he ran away. I think the analogy doesn't need to be explained. It is long overdue for many white people to acknowledge what was lost, what we gained at the expense of others, face our collective pain and subsequent problems and obstacles, and be sorry, say sorry, and do sorry, and take up our responsibility together to move forward really.